Hello, Louisville. Guess who's coming to dinner? Cuckoo, here I am. Guess who's coming to dinner? Welcome. I am your host, Janice Carter Miller. And I'm not on today, just me. I wanted to bring you a live stream of a panel that was held as a part of the Bridging the Divide series from the Fraser Kentucky History Museum. I was invited to this panel by none other than Mr. Sam Hawkins, who was one of the Black Six, the Louisville Black Six from back in the day, that were charged with conspiracy. And that conspiracy was around what they call the riot that broke out on 28th Street. So what you're going to see today, because it was a rather lengthy panel and audience participation discussion afterwards. But today, what you will see, I will air the panel discussion. And then on Friday, I'm looking to have Mr. Sam Hawkins be my guest as we look at and listen to some of the audience responses about that period of time in the history of our city and race relations, because they didn't just start this year. They've been going on for decades. You hear me? Decades. So what I'd like to do now, give me a second to make sure that I can bring this up and do this correctly, is you're going to hear about 45 minutes of the panel discussion from the Louisville Black Six, all of whom are there except for Pete Cosby and the deceased Miss Ruth Bryant. Ruth is deceased. Pete wasn't feeling well. But we have Manfred Reed. We have former Metro Councilwoman Sherry Bryant, the daughter of Miss Ruth Bryant. And Sherry was Sherry Bryant Hamilton. We also have Ken Clay on the panel and Manfred Reed. Okay, so let's join the panel with host Rachel Platt, and moderator, Miss Joy McAtee. Okay, so I'm going to put this on the screen. Okay, and I want to make it the focus. And
hello, hello. How are you all? What a crowd.
absolutely.
What a crowd. Good evening. I am Rachel Platt. I am the Director of Community Engagement here at the Fraser History Museum. And first, welcome to everybody who is here tonight, online and in person. We really thank you all for coming so much. Masks, if you want them, are available as you walked in. Restrooms, I have housekeeping always right around the corner here. That question always comes up. With the size of this crowd, we may go a little long to 7:15 to 7:30. So my guess is you're going to have a lot of questions. So thanks again for coming. We really appreciate it. We have partnered tonight with the Courier-Journal, and we have also partnered with the city's Lean Into Louisville program for the Black Six. This is part of the Fraser History Museum's Bridging the Divide series. Conversations that we've been having for about 3 years, conversations just like this one to see how we move forward as a community together. Vita Morgan, if you want to stand up and wave with the couriers here, she's going to have a roving microphone tonight to be asking questions of the audience and the
Kentucky homeowners, if you're an LG&E or KU customer, you can get paid to go solar in 2022. The Kentucky Public Service Commission has pushed back against utility companies to make sure that homeowners who go solar can still get paid for any excess solar energy that they produce. So not only can you save $100 to $400 or more every month on your utility bills when you go solar, but you can also get paid for any excess solar energy that your solar panels produce. That will actually apply as a credit on your monthly utility bills. And right now, you can go solar for $0 out of pocket, and for a limited time, you'll get a solar storage battery included with your installation. You'll also get a massive portion of the total cost of your installation reimbursed back to you with the renewable energy tax credit. So if you want to save anywhere from $100 to $400 or more per month on your utility bills, and in some cases erase your bills altogether, go ahead and hit that button below to find out if your home is eligible for solar. Now, not every home or roof meets the requirements for solar. So when you hit the button below, a new tab's going to pop open. You're going to answer a few quick questions, and right away you'll find out if your home is eligible and how much you can save on a monthly basis. So hit the button below and we'll talk with you soon.
This is the map of America.
Well,
And if you
hold
live in
on.
one of
I
the
don't know
20
what
states
happened to
revealed at
this,
the
but
end
I'm
of this
gonna go over here
video,
and fix
you
it.
can literally pay nothing to get the latest generation.
The questions that you have that we can do. Joy McAtee is next to me. She is program manager for the city's Lean Into Louisville program, and I'm delighted to say she is my co-moderator tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I appreciate that. Lean Into Louisville was established in 2019 as part of a series of activities, presentations, art exhibits, and conversations addressing and confronting the history and legacy of all forms of discrimination in our city. And we hope you will all lean in with us tonight for this very important conversation. It will take us back 54 years, but we'll talk about tonight many of the same themes and struggles in this case still apply today.
That's right. We're going to take you back to the spring of 1968, involving a case that I hadn't heard of. And now I'm not from Louisville originally, but moved here in '89, but had not heard of this case until we started doing some research on our West of 9th exhibit. So I have a question for the audience to start with. If you had heard of the Black Six, raise your hand. Okay. Actually, more than, well, I know the Delahanty and the Hawkins family. If you had not heard of the Black Six, raise your hand. Okay, so a pretty sizable amount. Take a look at the drawing behind me. So this is a drawing from the trial of the Black Six from the courtroom artist, Mary Cobb. We want to begin tonight by saying the names of the Black Six, and they're going to appear from left to right on the screen. Walter P. Cosby, Manfred Reed, and Ruth Bryant.
The other three names who make up the Black Six are Robert Kuyu Sims, Samuel Hawkins, and James Cortez. Two of the Black Six are joining us tonight, Manfred Reed and Sam Hawkins.
Let's have you all raise your hands so everybody can. Now, Ruth Bryant is no longer with us, but her daughter is here tonight to represent Sherry Bryant Hamilton. You all know her. Y'all have brought your own fan clubs tonight. We also had hoped to have Pete Cosby here. He just got out of the hospital, but I would love the fact that his daughter, Karen, is here, and other family members. With the Cosby family, please stand up. We really appreciate you all coming tonight, and our thoughts are with Pete.
Our other guests tonight include attorney Bill Allison, who was the cooperating attorney with the ACLU and helped defend the Black Six.
Just a couple more introductions. We'd also like to acknowledge the family of Bob Delahanty. The family is in the audience tonight. He was an attorney. He was with the Kentucky Civil Liberties Union and helped defend the Black Six. His wife, Dolores, if you don't mind standing real fast. They have a whole contingent. Dolores, we have a couple of questions we're going to be asking you later in the program as well.
And our final panelist is Ken Clay. We may know him for his many hats, including historian, but tonight we want you to know in 1967 he opened up a record store, but it was actually much more than that. It was the first Black culture shop in Louisville at the corner of 28th and Greenwood Avenue in the Parkland neighborhood, where riots would break out in the spring of 1968, an area that has still never fully recovered. These riots would lead to the arrest of the Black Six. Those riots would lead to the arrest of the Black Six, and you're going to see some pictures of the Black Six, pictures of what would become known as the Louisville Rebellion in the Parkland neighborhood behind us when the National Guard was called in, and also a then and now photo of the southwest corner of 28th and Greenwood. And we want to say a quick thank you to the Courier-Journal for allowing us to use these photos for the evening.
So there's going to be a rotation of pictures, and it's in a loop, so it will be continual. So this was the night before the riots broke out, or the night of, and we're going to get to these pictures and tell you who all of these players are. But just so you know that the pictures will be going in a loop that you can keep watching up there. It was a chain of events, as we know, leading up to those riots, but most notably, it was a traffic stop involving two prominent African Americans. We're going to get to the traffic stop in just a moment. It involved Manfred Reed, who at the time was a West End real estate broker, and his friend who was pulled over, school teacher Charles Thomas. But before we get to that, we want to get to the mood and what the mood of Louisville was like in May of 1968.
In Tracy K. Meyer's book, Civil Rights and the Gateway to the South, she says by the end of the summer of 1967, many residents in the West End felt increasingly frustrated and powerless. The open housing movement was stalled. Urban renewal authorities scheduled the building of more public housing units in an already overcrowded area, and the list keeps on going. So let's talk about that, all right? We'll start with you, Manfred, and then go on to you, Ken. You were in the middle of the neighborhood. What do you remember about that time?
The neighborhood was in transition at that time, shifting from basically a majority white population into a majority Black population. And there was...
I am a primary care physician, and I'm frustrated.
Sales activity as it relates to real estate, which was quite lucrative because the number of people who were attempting to buy homes throughout the neighborhood. And so there was a sense of inspiration and hope and excitability about that transition in the midst of the tension that was rising racially due to police activity. So that was the basic climate that we had to deal with. And there was considerable growth in the transition in the community. And at that particular time, the neighborhood was blessed with the services of legal professionals, medical professionals, and construction professionals, of which we have lost all of those assets, those human resources that's necessary for home building, housing development, and community development. And so when you look back, you begin to see the hope and aspirations that the people had at the beginning of this era of the transition. And we look at it today and we see the devaluation of our area to include property values and ownership, land ownership, and moving in the direction to be able to restore the spirit that we had at that time. I'm looking forward to that.
I don't know who else wants to jump in on this. Ken, I know you had opened up the store. Sherry, in the newspaper, you said tension was high. It was like a powder keg almost at that time, correct?
Yes, I would say that the whole 1960s,
Yeah.
I mean, it all kind of built up to a crescendo because there had been pickets and sit-ins and marches since 60, 61. 62, 63, all throughout the 60s. And I think the open housing, when it finally passed in 67, that was the last peaceful protest, where we were able to change the law, because in 68, it was moving more toward Black power, and people weren't inclined to be as peaceful as they were before. It had reached a kind of a fever point that things had to change, and they had to change now.
Yeah, Martin Luther King's message of nonviolence was actually being challenged all across the nation, by young upcoming, leaders and Turks, groups, that who said that we're going to address this issue, but we're not going to be nonviolent, we're going to face it head on. There were the Black Muslims, for example, headquartered in Chicago primarily, under the leadership of Malcolm X, who addressed these issues in a very upright and straightforward way. There were the Black Panthers out on the West Coast who, dotted uniforms and carried weapons to show their position in terms of protecting their own community. So there was this change going on all across the country, and the same in a miniature way was kind of happening here in Louisville. There began to be little groupings of people coming together, forming different kinds of relationships, saying that we're not going to just react. We've got to be proactive. And that was very interesting during that period of time.
And I want to pick up on that because you talked about organizations. So several organizations were gaining prominence in town. West End Community Council, which in turn founded BOLK, Black Unity League of Kentucky. Sam, you were active with that group. Did that put you on the radar, and I'm going to say this in quotes, as a troublemaker? Is that?
Well, in a sense, yes. In a sense, yes, but before then.
Before then?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I, as an activist, was under SCLC and West End Community Council. And Sherry's mother and Father Takow had asked us to find and organize young groups throughout the city and throughout the state, if we could, to bring about a change, a more change to our community. So we did that, and how we ended up in this situation that we're going to talk about tonight is that I went to, with others, went to DC under.
If you're thinking about buying solar panels, don't. The U.S. government will literally buy them for you if you take 60 seconds to answer a few questions.
Under orders to speak, we still call Michael and a couple others. So we did that, and I began to know a lot of people involved in the movement as far as resisting police brutality. All these different things were happening to our community. But yes, long before then.
That was put you on the radar.
So in August of 1967, before the traffic stop and the riots, Sam, you and Robert Kuyu Sims were arrested along with 3 others for arson and spent 2 months in jail because the bail amount was set so high that you couldn't afford to get out. You and Sims would later go on to be acquitted, but then again, there was already tension even with the police and the justice system, leading to this idea that there was a broader problem of police mistreatment and injustice. So, Sam, could you weigh in on that for us a bit?
Well, that's one event. Okay. When they arrested me and Bob on an arson charge, one of our West End Community Council leaders, we were in New York when this supposed to be arson incident happened. We were up in New York. I was with my brother and Hobart James, which is one of the directors of the West End Community Council, he took us to New York, and then he came back to his home, which is in Norfolk, West Virginia. I'm not Norfolk, Virginia, I'm sorry. So when we got back, the FBI came over to my house and said that we had been involved in an arson. And we were arrested for that. We weren't even in the city, in the state at the time. But that wasn't the first time. There was another time. It was also for arson. And that was the second time that they arrested us. So, and this whole play from the city at that particular time was to I guess is the saying used to be, and they tried to get us off the street because we were beginning to bring youth into a more aligned what was happening throughout at that particular time.
And Sherry, I just want to go to you quickly. What was your mom doing at this time? She was the wife of a physician. She had 4 children, and she served on the mayor's advisory council or committee for open housing. Could you tell us a little bit about her and if she considered herself to be an activist?
I think my mother was born an activist. When I think about my mother, I think about Shirley Chisholm's Unbossed, her campaign theme. She was from Detroit, Michigan. And when she moved to Louisville in 1947, my father was a physician and he had gotten on the staff of Red Cross Hospital. And so, unbeknownst to her, before they moved to Louisville, he found a place for her to live. But when she got there, it was Little Africa. And there were chickens and pigs and no sidewalks and no paved streets in some of the areas. And she was shocked that people were forced to live like that. So she was 24 years old when she moved to Louisville. And she was pregnant, 9 months pregnant with her second child. I'm the third one that came along, and then there was a 4th child. But she said people should not have to live like this. So that just stuck in her head. So she got involved with, she waited until her 4th child was in elementary school. And she said, now I can get active. Because she'd done, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the art classes, all of those kind of things. But this was just burning in her that she had to do something about it. So she joined the West End Community Council with Ann Brayton. Ann was a neighbor from around the corner, and they were good friends. And my mother was active, and they were active, believe it or not, in the PTA of the elementary school. So, and then coming through the Southwick cut through to get to Duval, where I went to school, my mother saw all this trash piled up, and she thought the people in the neighborhood were putting the trash out there. But it wasn't. It was people, if you looked at the trash, they had addresses from Indiana. People were just coming and dumping in the area. So my mother, in 1964, February of 64, got appointed by Mayor Calgar to the Mayor's Citizens Advisory Committee on Community Development. And that was the channel where federal funds were coming. They got first word of what was coming down the pike. War on Poverty, Head Start, things like that, maximum feasible participation. So she and Dr. Rabb were on that committee.
This is the map of America, and if you live in one of the 20 states revealed at the end of this video, you can literally...
And they had to deal with codes, violations, and zoning, and all those issues. So they worked to get the ear of the committee downtown. My mother worked between the 2 groups. She helped organize the Southwick Mothers and got them involved in the West End Community Council. So they came and brought their issues, and they were trying to work together. But that was the first time that the different classes of women had worked together effectively. So my mother would go to the meetings of the community development, right? And she'd be pressing the issue. And by that time, Mayor Schmid was like, I like friendly criticism. I don't like harsh criticism.
So, in other words, she's now on the radar.
Yeah, yeah. And then I found out years later that our house was under surveillance. You know, sometimes the police would stop by and come up to the door. And I found out just a few years ago that somebody told me that he was coming to a meeting at the house because our door was always open. There were young people coming and going. There were politicians. It was a house that was open to the community, really,
Okay.
for activism. So he said that the FBI was outside taking down license plate numbers of cars that were parked in the vicinity of our home. We didn't find that out till later, but you know.
Well, this just helps us set the mood of going into this traffic stop. So this was just a really good setting to kind of get the feel of what was happening at the time. We want to go to May 7th, 1968, the traffic stop that proved really to be the catalyst of so much that happened. Charles Thomas, a black school teacher, was pulled over. There are different stories that I've read on why he was pulled over. I've read suspicion of robbery, accused of stealing cash and checks from a drugstore. Manfred, you go by, you see your friend pulled over by police. You stop going, does he have car trouble? Do they have the wrong person? What was going through your mind and why did you stop and lead us through those events?
Well, that was a previous friendship or relationship that I had with Reverend Todd. Prior to that, we had a business operation on 28th and Dumanel. We ran a real estate office out of there and doing very well. And he was a part of that in terms of our promoting real estate sales and being able to talk to people in terms of putting a home up for sale or for buying a house. And so we related to the situation that he was in at that time, noticing law enforcement being there and that he was in that car. So we asked him, did he need any help? And how could we help? And eventually the conversation led to getting him out on bail. And at that particular point, Officer Clifford, Michael Clifford, came forward and forced us out of the street. As we were trying to retrieve and get back up on the sidewalk, he started slinging with a blackjack, and which was typical during those days. And so I defended myself with my arms, and I retaliated. And that led to an open conflict between me and Officer Clifford, which brought in as a restraining factor of Officer Wintergas and another officer, I don't remember his name, and Pete Cosby, and which we all were locked there in a sort of a tight hole. And I think that may have been a blessing in disguise because nobody got hurt.
So you were arrested at that time?
I was arrested at that time, yes.
All right, so you were charged with breach of peace and assault and battery, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and then so after an uproar by black leaders, the mayor at the time, Mayor Schmid, suspended Officer Clifford, and the police department's review board upheld that decision. The Fraternal Order of Police was upset by the news, challenged the decision, and the pronouncement on that officer being suspended was overturned. Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
Sure.
So it's overturned and he's reinstated. And then that caused an uproar with groups, right? Like Black Unity League Bulk. There was pushback and that kind of thing, correct? Kind of taking us through that.
Well, what happened was that after this incident, we got word that this brother and others had been arrested and harassed by the police. So that was a catalyst because a lot of people got to remember it was just a month and some days before Dr. King had just got assassinated. Mm-hmm. And we were, the community was really basically high-strung and upset at that particular time all over the country because of Dr. King. And we decided that we wanted to get together and request that this officer be relieved of duty.
I think we've got a problem with the mic. I want to make sure people can hear you. Oh, keep going.
This officer was relieved of duty. And therefore, you know, the anger grew in the community. So I had a conversation with Ruth Bryan, Sherry's mother, and she said, "Well, here's what I want you to do." I had just not long ago left Washington, so I would like for you to go up to DC and see if you can speak with Stokely Carmichael, if you can. And so it was 5 of us. We went to DC, and then we had got permission to invite Carmichael down. And this is how Cortez got involved. So I'll just go to the next one. Talk about
So James Cortez, another of the Black Six.
Yes.
All right, so the day before the rally that Stokely Carmichael was to appear at, correct?
Yes.
There was a delegation that appeared to ask the mayor what he was going to do about Clifford, the police officer. That meeting never happened. Reports say, again, that they were characterized as troublemakers and dismissed. So then let's go up to pick up with Monday, May 27th, 1968 then.
So this is the evening of the rally at 28th Street and Greenwood Avenue in the Parkland neighborhood. And you'll see pictures of that rally as this is circling in the photos behind us. James Cortez and Sam Hawkins stood on the hood of the car speaking to the crowds, but there was no public address system. One, I'm interested in knowing who all was there at that rally that evening on the panel, just with a show of hands. Is there anyone in the audience who may have been there also? A few hands, okay. Sam or Ken, what was being said during that moment?
Well, we was expressing what I was talking about, Brother Manford here, and about the situation with this police officer not being taken care of as far as him being returned back on the police force. And we were talking about the situations throughout the country. You know, everybody throughout the country was angry in Detroit. At the same time, there was another trial going on in Chicago, the Chicago 8. And it was just, we had heated rhetoric, but here's the point that I want to say, because I want to clear this up tonight. There was no riot as such. Okay, this has always been in the paper. We dismissed the crowd, told them once again that we were going to wait on the mayor to give us an answer about this situation happening with this police officer. And we dismissed everybody and said that everybody to stand by. We would get back with them and let them know what happened, and then we'll meet again. And as we dismissed, we noticed that there were like about 15 police cars in every alley between 20th and Greenwood. And all at once, this police car charged up into the crowd.
If you're thinking about buying solar panels, don't. The U.S. government will literally buy them for you if you take 60 seconds to answer a few questions below.
And got out of the crowd and told everybody that they needed to get out of the way, dismiss, go, whatever it is. And folks got angry. And what you call the Little Palace at that particular time, which was a hamburger place, that's where the disturbance started from. So they started throwing bricks and rocks off of that building.
Now, who did that? Say that again.
Just the crowd, everyone
This
was
crowd.
up on that building.
Okay.
I don't know exactly who was up on the building, but we had dismissed everything. You know, Cortez was in the car. He was gone back to the hotel. I was still there. Sherry was still there. And we had dismissed everything, and then this one, it just broke out. It just spontaneously broke out.
Well, and it's interesting because when you look at the accounts of what happened to lead up to that, that Ann Braden later called the Louisville Rebellion, is there a term then? Because I've seen uprising, I've seen riot, I've seen rebellion. What would you all prefer it be called? I'm curious, because when you said really there was no riot per se, you had dismissed the crowd. What would you all like to say or have it called?
We have to put it in perspective in terms of the social climate that we had at that time. There was no relationship that we had as business people with the social movement in the West End, such as the West End Community Council, Buck, we were in two different arenas. After that, that sort of changed it a little bit. As a matter of fact, my whole career was transformed from being a business person into working in the environment, working in the community as it relates to social change. So the way we have to look at it is in terms of what actually happened, because there was no meetings or plans or conspiratorial action that was going on as it relates to our behavior and contact. I was at the rally at 28th and Greenwood, and I was invited to participate, but I didn't participate out of fear because I was being, felt like I was being threatened. My career was being threatened.
So the chilling effect of everything that was going on.
So I had a tendency to withdraw, but I attended the events that impacted them because the community really responded to my plight. The community came out to help and aid and assist me in resisting police brutality. So when you look at it, we don't see it from a standpoint of a riot because there was no continuity to it. There was nothing there. We were as shocked as anybody to learn that it was considered to be riotous behavior.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's
Right.
a great perspective to have.
Mhm.
And Ken, during this, the National Guard is called out. During this time, because it lasted several days, you have a gun put to your head, right? Explain what happened.
Well, I was the owner of the corner of Jazz, which you mentioned was like the first African-American culture shop there. And on the day of the occasion, it was a beautiful day, gorgeous day, and people were coming from all over, to participate in the rally. I'm a businessman, so I'm in and out of my store. We're selling merchandise. I come out when I can to see the group, the people, and hear some of the speakers there, Now, once things kind of ended and were ending there is when everything kind of started up. My recollections from my vantage point, I remember like police coming into the area there. And I stepped out of my store, and down the block a little bit, I saw a police car being upturned. Then things kind of happened, Now, I didn't see anybody breaking into any shops or anything of that nature, because I'm inside my store. I don't know what's going on. But I know that later I found out things had happened all the way down on Dumanil Street. But the point where I was in terms of being there in my store, gave me the, I guess, privacy of not seeing what was really going on outside. Now, as things eased down, people kind of disappeared, it became dark, I had a visitor. And the visitor to my store just walked in was a chief of police Hyde. He was all by himself, and he had tears in his eyes. And I told him, come on, Chief, let's go into the back room. So, because I didn't want him threatened by anything. And we talked, and he had such.
Hi, everyone. Mark Barton here at Sandy Hook Promise. on December 14th, 2012.
Faith in the fact that he had a relationship with many of the black leaders, he thought, you know, in the community, but he really didn't have a relationship with the younger Turks that were, you know, participating outside. The next day, I came back to check on my store. There was the National Guard in front of my store and all up and down the block in marching. National Guard, county police, and city police. I couldn't get into my store, so I went over between some houses up toward Garland Avenue where I could look out on the street and have a kind of peek at my store and see what was going on. My friend Neville Tucker was standing right there, and Neville and I were standing talking, looking at the procession, when suddenly a young kid was running around playing and threw up a rock. The rock landed right in front of me. On the porch where I'm standing was a county police officer who turned around and put a sawed-off shotgun in my face, about like this far from my face. And I looked up into his eyes, and all I could see was fear, you know, and it scared the hell out of me, pardon the French. Neville saw that, and Neville ran out into the street, and he grabbed Bill Warner, who at that time was working for Mayor Schmeed, and said, Bill, come over here, you got to stop this. And when Bill came over and told the police to take the gun out of my face, that's when that ended. So that was an experience that I had at that point.
I'm sure.
In terms of that.
We want to say that all of that tumultuous time lasted for about a week. When all was said and done, $250,000 in property damage, 119 fires, 472 people arrested, 52 people injured, and 2 people were killed. When all was said and done with that, we want to fast forward to get now to the charges against the Black Six after all of this played out. So it seems there are 2 different point of views with this. On one side, seeking justice for victims of police violence, on the other, punishing the causes of disorder. So we kind of have 2 things going at this time. We'll talk about parallels to today in just a minute. So arrests started happening by the end of May of '68. The first of the Black Six to be arrested was Cortez, who wasn't from Louisville. Police said he confessed to conspiring to blow up oil refineries in the West End. Sam Hawkins and Robert Sims were next. So you all were among the first 3, Sam. What do you remember? Why do you think you were arrested?
Okay. I remember Officer Newton in my house, and I was getting up, going to the cleaners on Broadway, 38th and Broadway, and they came up, and it was kind of funny. I looked out in the backyard because there were like 3 police cars back in the alley back there. We had an alley sort of back behind our property, and these 3 police cars. And as I was going to the cleaners, I kept noticing all these police following me, you know. I got back home, and Officer Newton, and I forgot what his partner's name was, but anyway, he came up to me and he said, Sam, he said, Judge Colson need to see you. I said, Judge Colson need to see me, and I said, for what purpose? He said, well, he didn't say exactly what it was that you would come for, but he just asked me to bring you up there, if you don't mind. I said, wait a minute, hold on. I said, well, am I under arrest? And he said, no, you're not under arrest. And I said, well, you go tell Colson I'm not coming down there. So he said, well, I can't leave without taking you down there. And he said, where's Bob at? And I said, well, Bob's upstairs asleep as far as I know. And he said, well, can you go in and tell Bob to get dressed and come down? I'd like to speak with him. I said, okay, I'll do that. So as I was going upstairs, I could see out the back window police cars. So, you know, I wasn't going to be doing no escaping. So I went up there and got Bob up out of the bed, and we came down there, and he said, Colson would like to see you guys downtown. And I said, well, I don't feel like I got to go downtown if I'm not under arrest. So we kind of went through this change, and he said, well, man, just come on, so we ain't gonna have no problems. These were 2 black officers. And I said, okay, we go downtown. So we went downtown, and we got downtown, and we got put in a lineup. But before this lineup, Officer Fry, I think his name was Officer Fry, which I had known, he said, you look like you lost a little weight. He said, with you and, he said, you and H-Rap Brown, we got some pictures of you guys together after the airport. I said, oh, here it is. So H-Rap Brown, I don't know how many people know who H-Rap Brown was, but he ended up destroying himself by setting off bombs. Okay. But so he said, well, we got pictures of you, so we want you to go into a lineup so somebody can pick you, see if they can pick you out.
If you're a Kentucky homeowner, 2022 is your last chance to go solar. In December of 2000.
So me and Bob went in this lineup, and he said, okay, he said, if y'all don't mind, I want y'all to come and sit in this room right here till we get through. So we sat in a room for about 15, 20 minutes maybe. They come and got us, and this was the old courthouse, the old jail, the old part of the jail, where the police station is right now, but it's the old part. So we go through this tunnel, and so when we come out, man, it was like cameras. It was a courtroom full of people, all these lawyers was out there. And so I said, well, what's the problem? Colson said that we were under arrest for, it was a common nuisance charge, is what he called it. He said we was under arrest for this common nuisance charge. And he put I think it was a $5,000 bond or $10,000 bond. Well, common nuisance is only $10. Okay? That's prostitutes. That's the charge, actually. And he put this charge on us, and we was arrested. And I didn't know none of these lawyers at that particular time. So Dan Taylor, who's passed, he got up and he represented us. And then later on, that's when Bob and all of them got involved. That's how we got arrested.
So there were no official charges against the 3, but by that summer, a new grand jury met, indicted Hawkins, Sims, and Cortez, and then added 3 other local African Americans to the list for conspiracy to destroy private property. They were Manfred Reed, Pete Cosby, and Ruth Bryant. They allegedly conspired to damage a taxi company, dry cleaners, and oil refineries. Manfred, would it be fair to say that you really didn't even consider yourself an activist at this time, nor did you even know the other 5 members whom you would go on to be known as the Black Six?
Well, let me put it this way. Mrs. Bryant was a person that we looked up to. We didn't know her or have any type of relationship with her, but she was Dr. Bryant's wife. And she was active in the community as it related to the West End Community Council and all the issues that affected the quality of life in the West End. And so she was a person that we admired and looked up to, but we didn't know her. BUCK was an active organization in the neighborhood, dealing with the issues openly as it relates to police suppression and crime. And we didn't really have a relationship with BUCK. We knew them, we knew of them. As the crisis unfolded, we met them, but there was no open communication or social exchange between the Black Unity League of Kentucky and my company, which was Realty Company.
Because part of this was that there was a conspiracy, that these riots were planned, that they weren't spontaneous and all of that. So Sherry, let me grab you with this. because your mother at that point, when that all was transpiring, I guess I'm going to use quotes with riot because I don't even know that that's what we want to call it tonight, is having a birthday party for you, right? She wasn't even there that evening, correct?
No, she was there. We were there. It was my birthday, and my grandmother was in town because that was the weekend I was going to be graduating from college, from high school. And my grandmother had come from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we were excited about going up to 28th and Greenwood to hear Stokely Carmichael. We had heard Stokely was coming to speak. So instead of we were trying to decide whether to have the cake and ice cream before we went or after we got back. So we said, well, we'll go on up there and we'll have the cake and ice cream when we get back. Well, what happened up there. And so we wound up with my grandmother, who was in her late 60s by then, running to get away, running with Sam back down toward the West End, further west, to get out of what was going on. Oh, things on fire. And she's telling people, because she had just come back from Resurrection City, the Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C. And the last night that she was there was when everybody burned it down. So she turned around and she just was yelling at people, "You're looters, you're rioters, looters, stop it. Nobody was listening to her, and we just got out of there.
But then she's charged with conspiracy to blow up oil refineries that were in her neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So we just want to make sure that we point that out. Bill Allison, you've been quiet. We're bringing you into this now. So how did you get involved in this case? Because you would be one of the defense attorneys.
Mainly because I was just hired to be the lawyer for SCIF, the Southern Conference Educational Fund, which was Carl and Ann Braden's. They were the directors of that group, and I had just passed the bar, and they hired me. And I think
welcome to law.
That had been talked about for a year or so, depending upon the bar. But I think what happened was Ann became friends with Mr. Cortez. And he, not being from Louisville, he didn't have the family support that other folks had. And he had been represented by Dan Taylor. And I think somewhere along the line, he got my name from Ann, and I went on to the team, to that. And right around the time when the change of venue happened.
That was to Hart County.
Right.
Right.
Which was a real travesty of justice, because prosecutors really cannot ask for changes of venue. But because there was a friendly judge for the prosecutor, he granted this change of venue. And it was interesting. Why would he said, the prosecutor said, we cannot get a fair trial for the prosecution in Jefferson County. And what that really meant was that there was such an outrage by the community going to court, packing the court with supporters of the defendants when they would go to court, that the prosecutor probably thought he was going to have trouble getting a conviction. And Hart County at the time, about an hour's drive south, had about 10% of the population was black. So they were going from a large urban population to a very rural part of Kentucky, and that was a very difficult. That was clearly a political decision by Ed Schroering, Commonwealth attorney, and the organization that I was with was SCIF, and Carl and Ann's group. And so there was a lot of talk. What Carl and Ann and Skeff were trying to do was organize white people to protest this injustice. And when the case went to Hart County, that was the, among many injustices that happened in this case, that was one that was kind of that was very serious because it took it out of Louisville where support was, went to Hart County where they didn't know what was happening in Louisville. But a young couple got hired by Skeff, Mike Honey and Martha Allen. And their first job was to work on this case. And when it got sent to Hart County, there was discussion about what to do. So the first thing that they did was sent a letter to it turned out to be a real stroke of genius, I think. They sent a letter to everybody in the Hart County telephone directory. The letter said, talked about the case and the history of it, and then said, why don't let the officials in Louisville put this case off on Hart County. This is not your problem. This is a problem for Louisville to solve, which was exactly right. Now,
So it comes back to Louisville.
right. But first of all, let me just say, when the case went to Hart County, there was a new circuit judge in Hart County. It was his first day on as a judge.
Gosh.
And he gets this case down there. And the case is called, and the jury venire, if you know what a jury venire is, a lot of people who are going to be called for jury duty come to court. And a couple of them came up to the judge and said, "Judge, we got this letter." And it sounds a lot of funny now, but boy, I tell you, I mean, it was hotter than hell, and especially for the defendants to have to go to Hart County. So the judge looks at the letter, and he just really kind of goes berserk, really. He says, "Who did this?" You know, and Mike and Martha are in the courtroom. And so he's all upset, and he says, "I want these people found." And basically, upshot, he gets them indicted. And the indictment comes back, and we find that he has indicted them for, the grand jury has indicted them for embracery. In all honesty, some of us thought there was a misspelling, and we thought it could have been embuggery. But we got over that. And embracery is an old common law English thing of attempting to influence a potential juror. Hasn't been prosecuted very much. So they turned themselves in, and they got arrested. And just these young white folks from Michigan, this is their entry into the South. We told them that Skeff had put up a lot of money, and in the civil rights movements, everybody tried to get bonded out, a lot of arrests, a lot of bail bonds, and they basically Skeff didn't have any more money. It was hard to bond people out. Furthermore, it was my job to go tell Mike and Martha that they were going to have to stay in jail, but that there would be people coming from Louisville to demonstrate at Munfordville. And that happened on number of occasions. These jails in those days was when the jailer and his family lived right in the jail. Changed a lot. And so they didn't particularly like that. And when the demonstrators came down from Louisville, that was a pretty big deal in Munfordville, as you can imagine. We filed a lawsuit. Upshot of it was they spent about 3 months in jail. Finally, the prosecutors dropped those charges. We dropped our lawsuit. And most important, the case got sent back to Louisville. which that was what Sketh was trying to do, and Carl and I were trying to do in the first place. But anyway, the case comes back, and it comes back to a different judge, which is very crucial.
This is Judge Nicholson.
That's right. It comes back to Judge Nicholson, who has just won election, and he gets the case back. And
well, we just fast forward 22 witnesses.
I'm going to stop it right there. I'm stopping it right there because after this section, and it was kind of long, that there's a question and answer segment that I think you may enjoy. I thought the whole event was very informative, and it was a conversation that probably needed to be had 40 years ago, you know. So on Friday, I plan to have Mr. Hawkins and possibly Miss Sherry Bryan Hamilton join me on Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and we can we can eat up the rest of this conversation and talk about the rally that turned what they say to a riot. I just think it became mass confusion, and some people took advantage of that situation to loot. Wasn't a riot, you know. The police cars probably got in the way, you know, but it was not an orchestrated riot. It was not orchestrated. It was not for that purpose at all. We were meeting, and it was a peaceful rally, waiting for someone to come and speak to us. So on that note, I'm going to say it's dinner time. Guess who's coming to dinner? Bon appetit. I'll see you on Friday with part 2 of the Black Six discussion. Take care. Have a good evening.